Maybe skip this year's reunion, Anna. My dad's text glowed on my phone screen, each word a tiny dagger. Your brother's family feels uncomfortable with, well, you know. I did know. I made things awkward by not fitting into their perfect family narrative. At 32, I was the unmarried daughter who chose a creative career over the family's precious medical legacy, the black sheep who dared to be different. Your mother and I think it's best, another text followed, just until things settled down. We don't want any tension during the photos. I stared at my reflection in my apartment window, the Seattle skyline twinkling behind me. 5 years ago, their words would have crushed me. Now, I felt something different, a mix of amusement and satisfaction. If they only knew what I'd been working on this past year. Okay, Dad, I understand completely, I replied, watching 3 dots dance as he typed his response. That's my girl, always sensible. We'll FaceTime you during the reunion. I smiled, thinking about the manuscript sitting on my desk, the one that had just been accepted by one of the biggest publishing houses in the country, the one that would be released exactly 2 days before our family reunion. My phone buzzed again, this time from my brother James. Hey sis, no hard feelings about the reunion, right? Karen just thinks it's better if we keep things harmonious. The kids are at an impressionable age. Karen, my sister-in-law, the perfect doctor's wife who'd given my parents the perfect grandchildren and maintained the perfect family image. The same Karen who'd spent years making subtle digs about my hobby writing and my alternative lifestyle choices. No hard feelings, I texted back. I'm actually quite busy that weekend anyway. Busy was an understatement. I'd be on a national morning show discussing my book, a memoir about growing up in a family obsessed with appearances, about breaking free from toxic expectations, and about finding success on your own terms. My editor had called it brutally honest and refreshingly real. The advance reviews were already creating buzz in literary circles. A stunning debut that peels back the layers of family dysfunction with surgical precision, one critic wrote. The irony of that medical metaphor wasn't lost on me. I walked to my desk, running my fingers over the final proof copy, The Perfect Image, a memoir of breaking free by Anna Chin. My family didn't know I'd been writing it. They didn't know about the book deal, the upcoming publicity tour, or the film rights already being discussed. They'd spent so long dismissing my writing as a hobby, they'd never bothered to ask what I was working on. Even when I quit my corporate job last year to focus on my writing, they just sighed and asked when I was going to get serious about my life. My phone lit up with a message from my mother. Anna, dear, I know you're disappointed about the reunion, but try to understand. Your choices, they just don't align with our family values. Maybe if you follow the path we laid out for you. I left her message unread. Instead, I opened my laptop to check the morning show schedule. I'd be on right after the weather report, prime viewing time. The same time my family usually had their morning coffee. The same coffee shop where Karen held court every morning with other doctors' wives. The TV always on in the background. The same time my parents religiously watched their morning news while preparing for their day at the hospital. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my agent. Advance copies are being sent to major reviewers tomorrow. Your family hasn't gotten wind of this yet? No, I replied. They're too busy planning their perfect family reunion. Well, they're in for quite a surprise. The publisher wants to push up the release date by a day. That okay? I thought about my family gathering, about the carefully orchestrated photos they plan, about Karen's smug smile as she played the perfect daughter-in-law. Perfect, I typed back. Absolutely perfect. I poured myself a glass of wine and walked to my window, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. In just a few weeks, everything would change. My story would be out there. Not just mine, but the story of every person who'd ever felt suffocated by family expectations. My phone buzzed one final time. A group text from Karen to the family. Just finalized the reunion schedule. Matching outfits for the photos, formal dinner, and Dad's speech about the Chen medical legacy. This year will be perfect. I raised my glass to the Seattle skyline. Yes, Karen, I whispered. This year will be absolutely perfect. The morning of my book release, I sat in the green room of the National Morning Show, watching the makeup artist add final touches. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since midnight when the first online reviews dropped. I turned off notifications from my family members, but my agent kept forwarding me screenshots of their frantic messages in various family group chats. Is this some kind of joke? Has anyone actually read this? Anna, what ADV do you want? Karen had apparently discovered the book during her morning social media scroll. Right as it hit #1 on Amazon's new releases, her perfectly curated Instagram feed was now filled with angry comments about my betrayal. 5 minutes, Ms. Chen, a production assistant called out. I smoothed down my red dress, deliberately chosen to stand out against the beige and pastels my family preferred, and checked my reflection one last time. You're trending on Twitter, my agent whispered, showing me her phone. #perfectimage was mentioned 50,000 times in the last hour. The publisher is already talking about a second printing. I nodded, thinking about how my family would be watching this. Mom and Dad in their breakfast nook, Karen at her usual coffee shop table, James probably seeing it on the hospital break room TV. The segment started exactly as planned. The host, Sandra Mills, held up my book with its striking cover, a cracked family portrait with perfect smiles. Our next guest has written what critics are calling the most searing family memoir of the year. Please welcome Anna Chen, author of The Perfect Image. I walked out, smiled, and sat down, the cameras catching my calm demeanor. Anna, this book, it's extraordinary, Sandra began. You write about growing up in what looked like the perfect family from the outside. Successful parents, prestigious medical legacy, picture-perfect holidays. But underneath, I continued, was a family obsessed with appearances, where children weren't allowed to be themselves, where success was measured only by following a predetermined path, and where those who dared to be different were slowly but systematically excluded. Like you were recently excluded from your family reunion? I smiled, knowing this would hit home. Yes, exactly like that. I was told I made things awkward by not fitting their perfect image. My career choice, my lifestyle, my refusal to pretend, it all threatened their carefully constructed facade. And they don't know you're here today. They didn't know about the book until this morning. They spent so long dismissing my writing as a hobby that they never bothered to ask what I was working on. It's actually quite symbolic of our entire relationship, their refusal to see me as I am, rather than who they wanted me to be. The interview continued, each question allowing me to dismantle the perfect image my family had maintained for decades, not with anger or bitterness, but with calm clarity and undeniable truth. Your brother's wife features prominently in the book, Sandra noted. You describe her as the ultimate enforcer of family perfection. Karen represents everything our family values: conformity, appearances, social status. She's not the villain of the story, she's just another player in a system that prioritizes image over authenticity. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from James. Do you have any idea what you've done to Karen? She's crying in Starbucks. I ignored it as Sandra held up the book again. There's a particularly powerful chapter about your decision to leave medicine for writing. Yes, I nodded. My parents had my future planned since birth: follow them into medicine, marry the right person, have the right children, maintain the legacy. When I chose writing instead, they treated it as a personal betrayal. They never once asked if I was happy, only how it would look to their friends. By the time the segment ended, my social media following had doubled. The publisher called. They were rushing more copies to stores to meet demand. My agent was fielding calls from talk shows and book clubs. But it was the text from my mother that caught my attention. Your father and I are very disappointed. We raised you better than this. The reunion is in 2 days. How could you embarrass us like this? I typed back. I'm not embarrassing you, Mom. I'm just telling my truth. The truth you never wanted to hear. Then came Karen's message. You've ruined everything. The country club mothers are all talking about it. How am I supposed to show my face at the reunion now? I smiled, thinking about the reunion. The carefully planned photos would now have a very different meaning. The speeches about family legacy would ring hollow. The perfect image they'd worked so hard to maintain had cracked, revealing the truth underneath. My agent touched my arm. Ready for the bookstore signing? There's already a line around the block. I stood up, gathering my things. You know what's funny? I said. They excluded me from the reunion because I made things awkward. Now I've made things more than awkward. I've made them real. As we walked out, my phone lit up with one final message, this time from James. Mom and Dad are talking about canceling the reunion. Karen's threatening to leave town. What exactly was your endgame here, Anna? I typed back 3 words. Just being authentic. Then I walked out to meet my readers, leaving the perfect image behind. The day of the family reunion arrived with a thunderstorm, nature providing the perfect backdrop to the chaos I created. My social media was flooded with messages from readers sharing their own stories of breaking free from family expectations. The book had hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list, and my publisher had already secured a deal for a second book. I sat in my apartment, watching the rain against my window, when my phone rang. It was my grandmother, the only family member I hadn't written about in the book. She'd always been different, quietly supporting my choices while maintaining peace with the rest of the family. "The house is in absolute turmoil," she said, amusement clear in her voice. "Your mother's locked herself in her room, Karen's threatened to move to another state, and your father keeps muttering about damage control. But I have to tell you something, Anna." I held my breath, waiting for disappointment or criticism. "I'm proud of you," she continued. "Someone needed to crack that perfect facade. We've all been suffocating under it for too long." Tears welled up in my eyes. "You're not angry about the book?" "Angry? Darling, I bought 10 copies and gave them to my bridge club. We've been discussing it all week." Margaret Johnson finally admitted her son's business trip was actually rehab. It started quite a revolution among the country club set. I laughed, imagining the ripple effect throughout their social circle. Then my grandmother's tone turned serious. "They're still having the reunion, you know. Your mother refuses to cancel, says it would only confirm everything you wrote. But it's different now. The perfect image is shattered, and they don't know how to handle it." "Are they still taking the formal photos?" "Oh yes, but now everyone knows they're just for show. Your cousin Emily actually refused to wear the matching outfit Karen picked out. Said your book inspired her to be authentic." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from James. "This is your last chance, Anna. Come to the reunion, apologize to everyone. Tell the media it was all exaggerated. We can fix this." I showed grandmother the message and she sighed. "They still don't get it, do they? This was never about destroying the family. It was about being honest about who we really are." "Exactly," I replied. "I don't want to destroy anything. I just want to be accepted for who I am, not who they want me to be." "Well," grandmother said, "why don't you show them?" 3 hours later, I stood outside my parents' house, my grandmother beside me. The reunion was in full swing, though from the tension visible through the windows, it was hardly the perfect gathering they'd planned. I knocked on the door. The conversation inside stopped abruptly. My father opened it, his face a mix of anger and shock. "Anna, you weren't invited." Actually, my grandmother stepped forward. I invited her. "This is a family reunion, isn't it? And last I checked, Anna is family." We walked in to find everyone frozen in place. Karen stood by the fireplace, clutching her wine glass like a shield. James hovered uncertainly between us, while my mother sat rigid in her chair, her perfect posture a defense mechanism. "I brought something," I said, placing a package on the coffee table. "Advanced copies of the second printing. I signed them for everyone." "More accusations?" Karen's voice was sharp. "No," I replied calmly, "the same truth, but with a new chapter. About how breaking free doesn't mean breaking apart. About how real family survives even when the perfect image doesn't." My mother stood up. "You humiliated us. Everyone's talking about it." "People were always talking, Mom. The difference is now they're being honest. Like Margaret Johnson discussing her son's rehab. Like cousin Emily choosing her own clothes. Like me, writing my truth." "Your truth?" My father scoffed. "What about our truth?" "Dad, your truth was suffocating everyone. Look around. Has maintaining the perfect image made anyone actually happy?" The room fell silent. James looked at Karen, who was now staring into her wine glass. My mother's perfectly maintained smile wavered. "I didn't write the book to hurt you," I continued. "I wrote it because pretending to be perfect was hurting all of us. And look what happened. The book resonated because so many people were suffocating under their own perfect images." Grandmother picked up one of the books, opening it to the new chapter. "Maybe," she suggested, "instead of taking those perfect photos, we could sit down and actually talk. Like a real family." To everyone's surprise, Karen spoke first. "I read the book," she admitted quietly. "All of it. And you weren't wrong. About any of it. Even about me." The perfect image cracked a little more, but something real began to shine through the fragments. James sat down next to me. Mom's posture relaxed slightly. Dad loosened his tie. "So," I said, "should we take that family photo? This time with everyone just being themselves." The resulting picture wasn't perfect. My red dress stood out against their pastels. Karen's smile was genuine, if tearful. James had his arm around me instead of standing stiffly. Mom and Dad looked less posed, more human. Grandmother beamed from the center. It wasn't the perfect image they'd planned. It was better. It was real.